All that sun praising must have finally paid off, because Dark Souls Remastered is coming on the 25th of May of this very year. This Dark Souls remaster will let Souls veterans replay this classic game in even greater graphical detail, and let newcomers finally grow the proverbial pair and play one of the most challenging and rewarding games of all time. Anyway, I don't see what the problem is. Pears are delicious. Oh, I just got that. Oh, that's disgusting. Moving swiftly on, here are the things you need to know about Dark Souls Remastered. In Dark Souls Remastered, the original Dark Souls will be playable in silky smooth 60 frames per second for the first time. Yes, PC versions that were patched with DS Fix had this frame rate before, but it caused all sorts of weirdness, including problems climbing the many ladders in the game. No need for leg day this week. And yes, as part of this frame rate upgrade, Blighttown's awful frame rate will have to be fixed, as the single biggest and most famous technical gripe with the original game. The really good news is that this might allow you to actually appreciate Blighttown as one of the coolest areas of the game. It's a rickety ersatz Ewok village clinging to a castle wall, with amazing views down to the swamp below and up to the undead burg. The only problem with it was that up until now it looked like watching a slideshow from someone who went there on holiday. Dark Souls Remastered will also apparently be available in dynamic 4K if you have an Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, with maintaining that 60 frames per second the priority. We're hoping that doesn't mean Blighttown will drop to a 640 by 480 resolution image with pixels as big as your fist, because guys, that's just cheating. Dark Souls Remastered will be based on the Prepare to Die edition, meaning it will contain the excellent Artorias of the Abyss DLC, which allows you to get acquainted with Artorias, trusted knight of Lord Gwyn and, more importantly, owner of the most adorable doggy in all of Lordran. Okay, bad doggy, but I can't stay mad at you. The portal to the DLC area was integrated into the main game's world, was somewhat fiddly to find, and could only be played after you'd made it all the way to the Duke's archives and secured the Lord vessel. This meant lots of players either didn't get that far, or had already completed the game by the time it was released. It's worth the effort though when you're playing the remaster. Artorias of the Abyss sends you back in time and gives you a glimpse of what parts of Lordran were like when the world had only partially gone to ruin. Darkroot Garden becomes the Royal Wood, and you get to witness firsthand the destruction of a town called Ulasil.
Thou will understand one day.
Ooh, and you meet a talking mushroom called Elizabeth.
I am Elizabeth, guardian of this sanctuary.
Now you have to play it. When people played through the first Dark Souls around the original release, it's unlikely they got the most out of the multiplayer, probably because it is the most purposefully mystifying multiplayer mode in any game. As a result, this multiplayer was usually reserved for Souls veterans who had already gotten good? Whatever. Now, the factions known as the Nine Covenants and the effect they have on how you experience multiplayer are much better understood. There's Gravelord's Servant, which is designed to ruin other players' days by pulling them into your world for a scrap. Then there's Warrior of Sunlight, which encourages cooperation.
But use this to summon one another as spirits, cross the gaps between the worlds, and engage in jolly cooperation.
And Blade of the Darkmoon, which sees you hunting down players who have sinned like some sort of Dark Souls police. In terms of Dark Souls Remastered, there are two bits of good news here. Firstly, there will now be dedicated servers for multiplayer, meaning at least you're less likely to end up wondering if multiplayer is actually working or not. We didn't really need that added level of mystery. Secondly, Dark Souls Remastered will also support up to 6 players like Dark Souls 2 did, rather than the 4 from the first game, which means an extra 2 people to potentially show up and throw hands in Darkroot Garden. Apparently, the addition of the password matchmaking system from Dark Souls 3 will allow you to get into competitive games with friends as well, making it that bit more likely that this time Dark Souls multiplayer will be more than just getting randomly invaded and ganked. It's basically a greatest hits of Dark Souls multiplayer in the original and best Dark Souls game world. What's not to like? The Dark Souls remaster is apparently primarily being handled by a Polish company called Q-Lock, who supposedly fixed up Mortal Kombat X on PC after a company called High Voltage were pulled from the project. They also looked after the Dragon's Dogma remaster, which means they have previous experience with sympathetically polishing beloved, critically acclaimed Japanese fantasy RPGs, which have challenging combat systems and innovative online features. I mean, that's sure to come in handy. Also, though we really only have the one image and a brief teaser to go on, it looks as if the remaster will remain close to the art style of the original game, only with presentation as crisp and detailed as that of Dark Souls 3. The difficult balancing act will be improving the visuals while being so unerringly faithful to the original art design that the fans remain happy. Imagine this, basically. Yeah, rather you than us, Kulok. If you have a PS4 and have found about £300 down the back of the sofa and can read just enough Japanese to enter your credit card details, there's an incredible Dark Souls Trilogy box set that is just waiting to supplant some beloved family photos on your mantelpiece. It contains Dark Souls Remastered, Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, and Dark Souls 3 Fire Fades Edition, 6 separate soundtrack CDs, which are apparently some ancient format for holding music, and item encyclopedias for each game, contained in a chunky pair of bookends. It's almost worth it for those bookends alone, and also that Dark Souls 2 disc will make an excellent coaster. I kid. Dark Souls 2 is pretty good, but it's just not as good as Dark Souls. But then, what is? Nothing. Alright, we're an Xbox channel, but even we are eagerly awaiting the Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered, which will arrive on the same day, May 25th. This version of the game will be less about it looking great or improving the frame rate, and more about the ability to play the game on the bus or the toilet. In fact, it's being developed by an entirely separate company, and graphically we're expecting it to be somewhere in between the original game and the full remaster. But it's the perfect portable game, allowing you to smash your head against that boss you're stuck on whenever and wherever you are. Be careful though, when you hurl your Switch into a wall in frustration, it will be far more expensive to replace than a controller. So that's everything you need to know, but what are you hoping for from the Dark Souls remaster? Character respecking, a new version of Lost Izalith, an easy mode? Let us know in the comments, and like and subscribe for plenty more on the game, including probably Andy playing it at some point. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.